The modern illusion of freedom, a cage decorated with choices. We're told we're living in the best time in history. We have medicine, technology, global communication, and convenience at our fingertips. From the outside, everything looks like progress. But no one asks the more difficult question: if this is the peak of human advancement, why does it still feel so empty? Imagine this: you walk into a supermarket. You're surrounded by hundreds of cereal boxes, chocolate-flavored, gluten-free, organic, sugar-loaded, oat-based, keto-approved. At first glance, it feels empowering. Look at all these choices. So much freedom. But if you pause for a moment, a deeper truth begins to unfold. Who decided these were the cereals you could choose from in the first place? You didn't grow the grains. You didn't design the packaging. You didn't even stop to question whether cereal was the best way to start your day. You just walked in and chose from what was already selected for you. And this isn't just about cereal. It's a metaphor for how modern society presents options not as authentic freedom, but as a pre-curated illusion of autonomy. This is the modern illusion of freedom, a children's menu painted with adult colors. We're told we live in a world of endless possibility, that we can be anyone, do anything, live however we want. But in reality, the freedom we're sold is limited, pre-approved, and manufactured to keep us within invisible boundaries. 1,000 choices, one system. Take a step back and look closely. You'll notice the illusion in almost every part of your life. Take your career, for example. Sure, you're free to choose any path. Want to be a poet? Go ahead. But can you survive in the world without monetizing your art? The system whispers, be who you want as long as it makes money. Even your opinion's the most sacred expression of your mindar, subtly shaped within narrow confines. You're told you can speak freely, but speak too freely and you'll meet resistance. Post something that challenges the structure itself and you're labeled extreme, problematic, or difficult. The acceptable range of thought, known as the Overton window, is beautifully decorated to give the illusion of freedom, but it's a cage nonetheless. We confuse variety with freedom. 50 brands of toothpaste don't represent liberty, they represent marketing. True freedom isn't in choosing between endless minor variations of the same theme. It's in stepping back and asking, why is toothpaste a billion-dollar industry in the first place? Who decided this was important? Performance over authenticity, consumerism sells freedom wrapped in packaging. Pick your clothes, your coffee, your phone wallpaper, but try stepping outside of unspoken norms about beauty, success, or productivity and you'll quickly see how shallow that freedom is. Society smiles while handing you 1,000 flavors of the same idea. Conform, but feel like you're choosing. Social media is perhaps the most seductive stage for this performance. It promises expression, a voice, a platform, but behind the curtain, your voice is curated by algorithms that reward outrage, conformity, and superficial trends. Say something honest, something that doesn't fit a neat box, and you're buried. Post a selfie with a popular filter, and you might go viral. What we're left with isn't expression, it's performance. Even rebellion is branded now. Want to be a nonconformist? Great, there's a brand for that. A playlist, an aesthetic, a hoodie with the word rebel printed across the chest. Modern rebellion often looks less like revolution and more like a marketing campaign. The spell of just enough, and here lies the most dangerous part of the illusion: you feel like you're free. You walk through life thinking you're in control, never realizing the lanes were painted long before you arrived. The illusion works precisely because it rewards you just enough. Just enough dopamine, just enough success, just enough applause to keep you from asking the deeper questions. Is this really freedom? Or is it just comfort in captivity? Real freedom doesn't begin with having infinite options inside a limited box. It begins when you start to see the box. When you ask, why do I want what I want? Who benefits from my choices? That moment of awareness is when the spell begins to break. Because the most powerful form of control in modern society isn't dictatorship, it's distraction. Not chains, but choice. Not suppression, but saturation. You're not stopped from asking questions. You're just too busy to ask them. The productivity trap now. Picture a typical morning. You wake up, you check your phone, you scroll past a motivational quote. You have the same 24 hours as Elon Musk. Suddenly your mind races. Emails, tasks, goals. You feel behind before even brushing your teeth. Welcome to the productivity trap. In today's world, busyness has become a badge of honor. We idolize the grind, romanticize burnout, and glorify sleep deprivation. We chase goals, not because they nourish us, but because we're afraid of falling behind. Your value, society insists, is directly tied to your output. But who decided that? From the earliest age, we were trained to chase rewards, gold stars, good grades, promotions, likes, shares. Slowly, we internalized a dangerous equation: more doing equals more value. It became truth, not because it was right, but because it was repeated so often we stopped questioning it. And here's the twist: just like with the serial aisle, we've mistaken movement for meaning. We sprint through life collecting achievements, thinking we're free. But if your worth is always tied to your output, then you're never truly freer, just a machine in disguise. The beginning of real freedom, so what now? The beginning of real freedom is not in breaking the system overnight, it's in awareness. It's in slowing down long enough to ask uncomfortable questions. It's recognizing that the menu is not the meal, that the performance is not the self, and that the curated options were never your only path. Real freedom begins with consciousness, with curiosity, with questioning the world as it is and imagining what else it could be. You are not your productivity. You are not your branding. You are not the choices laid out before you in a brightly lit store aisle. You are more. But you'll only remember that when you dare to ask, am I truly free or am I just well managed? Because the world doesn't need more compliant workers or curated influencers. It needs awake people. And that awakening begins when you stop mistaking the cage for the sky, the lie of productivity and the disappearing self we live in a culture obsessed with doing. From the moment we open our eyes in the morning, we're already behind. Emails are waiting, reminders ping, goals glare back at us from apps and journals. We told that productivity is power, that ambition is virtue, that busyness is proof of value. But somewhere deep inside, there's a quiet whisper asking, why does it never feel like enough? The system is designed this way. The more insecure you feel, the harder you try to prove your worth. You buy planners, download productivity apps, enroll in courses thinking that one more hack, one more accomplishment will finally deliver peace. But peace never comes, because the bar keeps moving. It's a treadmill with no off switch. Every milestone passed reveals a dozen more, and slowly you start to confuse exhaustion with progress. Even leisure has been hijacked. Read a book? It better be self-development. Go for a walk? Track your steps, close those rings. Sit still for 5 minutes? Only if you can rebrand it as mindful recovery. We've forgotten how to simply exist, to be without purpose, without output, without optimization, to just be alive. But the truth is this: you are not a machine. You were never designed to operate at maximum efficiency every hour of every day. Nature doesn't bloom all year long, why should you? Trees shed their leaves. Animals rest. The seasons themselves retreat into winter. But humans, especially in modern industrial cultures, are expected to grow, grind, produce, and perform endlessly. Productivity culture masks itself as empowerment, but often it reinforces a quieter, more dangerous form of slavery, the kind you willingly submit to. A psychological cage where you chain yourself to tasks, convinced you're free, where rest becomes guilt and stillness feels like failure. This isn't just a mental health issue, it's an identity crisis, because somewhere along the way many of us stopped being human beings and started being human doings. We are not addicted to work, we're addicted to being seen as useful, to being validated. And that's terrifying, because if your entire identity is built on being productive, what happens when you stop? Who are you when you're not doing anything? Here's a radical idea: you are already enough, even when you're resting, even when you're not performing, even when you're just being. You don't have to earn the right to exist. You don't have to justify your breath. Your life is not a quota to meet. Existence is not a performance. And in a world addicted to hustle, sometimes the most revolutionary act is doing nothing on purpose. So, the next time your mind whispers, you're not doing enough, try answering it with gentleness. Maybe I'm doing exactly what I need to. Maybe I'm allowed to just be. Because freedom isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet realization that the treadmill has stopped and the world didn't end. Who are you, really? Ask yourself, who am I? It's a simple question, but try to answer it and watch how fast your mind reaches for labels. I'm a student, I'm a manager, I'm a mother, a father, a creator, a leader, I'm funny, I'm anxious, I'm driven. These are roles, traits, identities. But where did they come from? Did you choose them? Or were they handed to you like uniforms on the first day of school? From birth, the world begins shaping your identity. Your name is chosen for you. Your gender is assigned. Your culture, values, language all stamped into you before you can form conscious thought. You learn what brings praise, and what brings punishment. And you adapt. You become a good child, a high achiever, a dependable worker. You become what's accepted. Bit by bit, the real you, the messy, mysterious, contradictory self gets traded in for a version that fits. One that pleases others. One that avoids rejection. One that earns applause. But here's the unsettling truth. Identity isn't discovered, it's constructed. And society has become a master architect. Social media, advertising, even the education system, they don't just reflect who you are. They tell you who to be. You scroll past filtered faces and curated lifestyles, and a voice in your head whispers, "Should I look like that too?" You wear clothes not just for warmth, but to say something about yourself. You buy a car, a coffee, a brand not for utility, but for identity. You speak a certain way, post certain things, use certain emojis because you're constantly trying to announce to the world, "This is who I am. Please believe me." It's not your fault. We've all been conditioned to believe that identity is something that must be curated, polished, and presented. In a world driven by algorithms, your sense of self becomes content. Every photo, every status, every story, it's not just expression, it's performance. But what happens when the performance becomes the reality? What happens when you've played the role for so long but you forget who you were before the script? Here's a truth most people never face. Most people never meet their true self. They live and die inside roles crafted for survival, not authenticity. They confuse who they are with what they've been told to be. And somewhere inside, their real self sleeps hidden beneath decades of performance. But sometimes, maybe during a moment of solitude, or even in the middle of a breakdown, something breaks through. A glimpse of the self beneath the mask. A feeling that says, "This isn't me. I've just been playing this role for so long, I forgot I could stop." And in that moment, you face the real question, who would I be if I stopped performing? The path forward, this journey toward reclaiming our humanity from the grips of productivity and performance, starts with awareness. You don't have to quit your job, delete your accounts, or run to a cabin in the woods. You just have to start asking better questions. Why do I want what I want? Who benefits from my choices? What would I do if no one were watching? And above all, who am I when I'm not trying to be anyone? The world may never stop trying to measure your worth by what you produce. But you don't have to believe it. You can reclaim your right to be whole, even when you're still. You can be a full human being, even when you're not achieving, performing, or earning. And that, in today's world, is the beginning of real freedom. This is a profound meditation on identity, comfort, and the quiet crisis of selfhood in modern life. The mask slips, returning to the self in an age of noise, in a world addicted to attention. Silence is an act of rebellion. You catch a glimpse just for a moment of something raw, unpolished, a version of you that isn't smiling for the camera or speaking in soundbites. It doesn't want to win or impress. It just is. That's the real you. The one beneath the noise, beneath the bio, beneath the curated version of yourself you've been conditioned to perform. This doesn't mean you must reject every role you've taken on. Some identities serve a purpose. Some masks were once needed to survive. But when the role becomes the cage, when your name becomes a job description and your life a list of goals, you must ask the question that most people avoid. Who am I without all this? Try this. Sit in silence. No music. No phone. No distractions. Just you. Ask, if no one was watching, what would I still care about? What would I still love? What would I stop doing? The answers won't come quickly, but when they do, they will be real. That's where your true identity lives, not in a LinkedIn headline or a number of followers, but in the quiet knowing that you are more than the roles you play. You were never meant to be a brand. You were meant to be a human. And the most liberating journey in this modern age isn't a vacation or a promotion, it's the journey back to yourself. Comfort, the velvet cage. We love comfort. Of course we do. The soft bed, the hot shower, the instant meal, the one-click delivery. A world where everything is available and nothing hurts, at least not right away. Why wouldn't we want it? Comfort feels good. It feels like safety. It feels like progress. But beneath its warmth lies a colder truth. Comfort, when left unquestioned, becomes a cage. Because comfort isn't neutral. It shapes us. It teaches us to expect ease. It dulls our edges. And when overindulged, it begins to numb the very instincts that lead to growth. Look around. Everything is optimized to reduce friction. Why walk when you can ride? Why cook when you can order? Why talk when you can scroll? In the name of convenience, we've traded effort for ease. But friction is where the magic happens. It's where muscles are built, minds are stretched, and souls evolve. The illusion of comfort tells us we're thriving, but often we're just surviving numbed, entertained, and quietly drifting in a padded room. Because in the comfort zone, everything is made easier except the things that really matter. Growth still hurts. Truth still stings. Real connection still takes work. But when you've been fed dopamine on demand, even mild discomfort feels unbearable. We lose our tolerance for silence, for boredom, for effort. And when we lose those things, we lose the ability to sit with life as it is, to wrestle with it, question it, reshape it. Comfort doesn't just protect us from danger, it protects us from awareness. Why reflect when you can binge? Why confront emotions when you can drown them in noise? Why risk failure when the screen is safe and always on? That's the real danger. Not that comfort makes us lazy, but that it makes us content with less than we're capable of. You stop dreaming not because you've stopped desiring, but because what you have is good enough. You stop fighting not because the battle is over, but because the couch is too soft and the feed is too endless. And here's the scary part. The system knows this. A comfortable population is a controllable one. When people are fed, distracted, and passively entertained, they are less likely to resist, to revolt, to even question. Comfort pacifies rebellion. It smooths out the sharp edges of the human spirit into a quiet, manageable hum. So no, comfort isn't evil, but unquestioned comfort that's the slowest kind of death. The one where you don't even realize you've stopped living until decades have passed by your window and you forgot to look up. The antidote? Choose discomfort. Not recklessly, not masochistically, but deliberately. Do hard things. Not just for the outcome, but for the reminder that you can. Sit with boredom. Question convenience. Break the loop. Because real life, the raw, vibrant, unpredictable kind lives just beyond the edge of comfort. The echo of emptiness at some point, in the middle of all the noise, the opinions, the schedules, the screens, they begin to feel it. A strange emptiness. It's not loud, not dramatic, just there. Like walking into a room that used to be filled with music, only to realize it's gone quiet. It creeps in during the pauses, the silent drive home, the end of a movie, lying in bed staring at the ceiling while your phone rests just out of reach. And in those rare still moments, it whispers, "Is this really me?" Because somewhere along the way, you forgot. You forgot who you were before the world told you who to be. Before success became urgent and authenticity became optional. Before your reflection was filtered through algorithms and your voice shaped to fit what performs. This is the tragedy of the modern mind. We know the price of everything and the value of nothing. We can name celebrities and trends, but not our own values. We know how to chase goals, but not how to sit in peace. We are hyper-connected, yet deeply alone, especially with ourselves. Back to the beginning, and so we circle back. To the moment when the mask slips. To the glimpse of the self that isn't performing. To the voice inside that says, "I miss me." That's where the journey begins. You don't need to escape the world. You just need to wake up within it. You need to reclaim silence, reclaim effort, reclaim your soul from a system that profits from your numbness. Because you are not a brand. You are not your productivity. You are not your labels. You are the one beneath it, or the quiet, wild, wandering self who just wants to remember what it feels like to be real. Your words read like a manifesto for awakening, raw, reflective, and reverent. They speak to something deeply human that so many have forgotten, the self beneath the noise. Welcome back to yourself. Why? Because somewhere along the way, we abandoned the self. Not intentionally, not with fireworks or ceremony, but slowly, quietly, without even noticing. The real self, the one behind the masks. The child who once stared at clouds, got lost in drawings, asked questions with no purpose but wonder. The version of you that existed before the algorithms, before the applause, before the world taught you that performance equals worth. Modern society doesn't demand you forget yourself. It simply keeps you too busy to remember. From the moment you wake up, you're plugged in. The calendar tells you who to be. The phone tells you what matters. And the world applauds the version of you that's most useful to it, not necessarily the version that's most true. But here's the truth. No one profits from telling you, you are not your productivity. You are not your profile. You are not your performance. You are something far deeper, a living, breathing consciousness with dreams that weren't sold to you and feelings that don't need to be filtered. The way back is not through achievement. It's through attention. It's not in what you do, but in what you notice. Not in how you show up online, but in how you show up to yourself. And it starts small, defiant moments of stillness, Moments where you sit in silence instead of reaching for a screen. Write not to post, but to listen to your own thoughts. Say no not to optimize, but to honor what's real. Do absolutely nothing and still know you're worthy. Because the self doesn't shout, it whispers. And to hear it, you must slow down. Step off the stage. Close the tabs. Turn down the volume of the world until you can finally hear the quiet voice within. When you remember, and when you hear it, when you remember something miraculous happens, you remember what you love not because it's trending, but because it lights something up inside you. You remember what you fear, not because you've been warned to avoid it, but because there's truth hiding in it. You remember what matters not for status, but for soul. You stop asking, what shall I do next? And start asking, who do I want to be when no one's watching? That's when a shift begins. That's when the illusion fades. The stage, the curated identity, the productivity trap, the outsourced self, all of it starts to lose its grip. You don't just wake up from sleep. You wake up from the trance of a life you never truly chose. And in that waking, you become dangerous. But not in the way the world fears. Dangerous to the systems that profit from your disconnection. Dangerous to the narratives that thrive on your obedience. Dangerous to the culture of hustle that says rest is laziness. Because a person who knows themselves cannot be controlled. They don't chase, they choose. They don't seek approval, they return to truth. They don't need to perform their life. They live it fully, freely, and on purpose. This was the great deception of modern society, that your worth was something you had to earn, that you were only as valuable as your last accomplishment. That identity was a product. That success meant never stopping. But now you see it. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Welcome back to your breath, to your silence, to your forgotten curiosity, to the version of you that once asked questions just to ask. Welcome back to your humanity, to your hunger for truth, to your resistance to being commodified. Welcome back to the self that doesn't need to hustle to belong, the self that doesn't need to speak to be valid, the self that was never lost only buried beneath noise. Welcome back to yourself. We've missed you.